What if your future wasn't shaped by massive changes, but by the tiniest decisions you make each day? Imagine unlocking the power to transform your health, career, relationships, and mindset, not through sudden breakthroughs, but through small, consistent actions that compound over time. In Atomic Habits, James Clear reveals a simple truth that can change your life. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. This is not just another self-help book. It's a blueprint for reshaping your identity, reprogramming your behavior, and mastering the hidden forces that drive your everyday life. Whether you want to break bad habits, build new ones, or simply become one better every day, this book will teach you how to design a life that works for you, one small habit at a time. Because in the end, it's not the big moves that change everything, it's the atomic ones. Welcome to Atomic Habits, a journey into the small decisions that shape our destiny. We live in a world obsessed with goals, breakthroughs, and overnight success. But what if lasting transformation doesn't come from giant leaps, but from tiny steps taken consistently? In this audiobook, we'll explore the science and strategy behind habit formation, why some people effortlessly change, while others stay stuck in old patterns. You'll discover how to make good habits stick, how to break free from destructive routines, and how to design a life where progress becomes automatic. This is more than just about productivity. It's about identity, because every habit you build is a vote for the type of person you want to become. Whether you're looking to transform your health, your focus, your career, or your mindset, this book will show you how to start small, think long-term, and let change happen naturally, one powerful habit at a time. So find a quiet space, take a deep breath, and let's begin the journey. Your future is built here, one atomic habit at a time. Chapter 1. The surprising power of atomic habits. In a world that often glorifies overnight success and dramatic transformation, we tend to underestimate the enormous potential of tiny, incremental improvements, what James Clear calls atomic habits. This first chapter sets the foundation for the entire philosophy of the book by illustrating how habits, much like atoms, are the building blocks of meaningful change. Clear opens with a compelling story from British cycling. For nearly a century, the British cycling team was notoriously bad. No Olympic medals, no Tour de France wins, and even bike companies refused to associate with them for fear of reputational damage. But then came a new coach, Dave Brailsford, who implemented the concept of marginal gains. The idea that if you could improve everything related to cycling by just 1%, the cumulative effect would be extraordinary. From adjusting bike seats for comfort to training on mattresses that enhanced recovery, these minor tweaks eventually led to an unprecedented winning streak. The principle behind this transformation is simple but profound. Small habits compound over time, for better or worse. Clear emphasizes that just as money compounds through interest, habits compound through repetition. A one improvement daily might feel trivial, even invisible at first, but when sustained over time, it leads to massive breakthroughs. Conversely, one decline every day gradually erodes progress. This insight shifts the focus from goals to systems, because while goals are outcomes, systems are what actually drive progress. Clear also dives into the math of habit formation, explaining the exponential nature of small improvements. For example, if you get one better each day for a year, you'll be 37 times better by the end of the year. But because of our natural desire for immediate results, we often fail to appreciate the plateau of latent potential, that frustrating phase where nothing seems to be happening. We try to build a new habit, go to the gym, eat better or write more, but without instant payoff, we give up. Yet Clear insists this plateau is deceptive. Habits don't deliver linear progress. They operate like compound interest, where the most dramatic results come after a long period of consistent effort. This is why patience is essential. Many people fail not because they're doing the wrong thing, but because they abandon the process too early. Clear compares this to breaking a rock with a hammer, not knowing which exact strike causes the rock to split, even though each hit contributes. The split occurs because of all the previous strikes that built up pressure. Habits work in the same way. He also warns us to reframe how we view success and failure. Instead of obsessing over single events, such as publishing a best-selling book or losing 30 pounds, we should focus on the trajectory. Where are our habits taking us? Success is the product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformations. This mindset frees us from short-term frustration and anchors our efforts in sustainable progress. Furthermore, Clear debunks the myth that change is only possible through massive action. He points out that behavior change doesn't require motivation as much as it needs alignment between your habits and your identity. The chapter introduces an identity-based approach, explaining that true behavior change isn't just about what you want to achieve, but about who you want to become. For example, instead of saying, "I want to run a marathon," say, "I am a runner." This subtle but powerful shift reinforces behavior from within. By casting votes for the type of person you want to become through your actions, you reinforce your identity with every small decision. In other words, habits are not just actions. They are signals of your future self. Clear concludes the chapter by setting the stage for the rest of the book. He explains that lasting change comes not from motivation or willpower alone, but from designing an environment that supports good habits, building systems that make the right behaviors easier, and understanding the underlying cues and rewards that shape behavior. The journey to transformation doesn't begin with a grand declaration. It starts with a small step, repeated consistently. Atomic habits are not about doing more, they're about doing better, starting small, and trusting the compounding process. It's about understanding that the smallest improvement, when repeated consistently, has the power to reshape your identity, redefine your future, and create remarkable results beyond anything dramatic change could offer. In this way, James Clear elevates small daily actions into the most powerful force for personal transformation and challenges us to stop chasing overnight success and start investing in the habits that quietly, steadily shape the rest of our lives. James Clear takes a profound dive into the relationship between habits and identity, arguing that lasting change stems not from behavior modification alone, but from a shift in self-perception. While many people attempt to change their lives by focusing on outcomes, like losing weight, writing a book, or earning more money, Clear asserts that the most powerful and enduring transformation happens when change originates from the inside out, beginning with identity. He introduces 3 layers of behavior change: outcomes, processes, and identity. The outermost layer, outcomes, deals with the results we want. The middle layer, processes, encompasses the systems and habits we adopt to achieve those results. And the innermost layer, identity, is about what we believe about ourselves. Most people focus on outcome-based habits, aiming for goals like, "I want to be fit," but rarely question the deeper belief systems that either support or sabotage those goals. Clear flips the script by suggesting that the key to long-term behavioral change is identity-based habits, those aligned with the person you believe you are or aspire to become. He illustrates this with a powerful example: 2 people trying to quit smoking. When offered a cigarette, one says, "No thanks, I'm trying to quit," while the other says, "No thanks, I'm not a smoker." Though both statements reject the cigarette, only the second reflects a change in identity. The first person still sees themselves as a smoker who's trying to change, while the second has already adopted a new self-image. This subtle difference profoundly affects the consistency and longevity of change. Clear explains that every action we take is a vote for the type of person we believe ourselves to be. You become your habits. Every time you write, you cast a vote for being a writer. Every time you train, a vote for being an athlete. Over time, as these votes accumulate, they reinforce an identity until it becomes natural. The process of habit formation, then, is really the process of becoming someone. But this shift doesn't require perfection. You don't need to win every vote. You just need to keep voting in the same direction. This concept reframes habits from being chores or tools to being expressions of identity. Rather than seeing habits as tasks to complete, we begin to view them as affirmations of who we are. Clear acknowledges that identity is not static. While it's shaped by past experiences, it can be reconstructed through conscious action. He warns that many people get stuck in rigid self-narratives, statements like, "I'm bad with directions," "I'm not a morning person," or "I have a sweet tooth," which become self-fulfilling prophecies. These beliefs often go unexamined, operating beneath the surface like invisible scripts that dictate our behavior. To change them, we must challenge these assumptions and prove a new identity to ourselves through repeated action. He calls this the two-step process of identity change. First, decide the kind of person you want to be. Second, prove it to yourself with small wins. If you want to become a reader, start by reading one page. If you want to be organized, start by making your bed. These small actions are not insignificant. They are foundational because they begin to rewrite your story. In this way, identity and habits form a feedback loop. Identity drives behavior, and behavior reinforces identity. The more you act in alignment with the person you want to be, the more you believe in that identity, and the easier it becomes to maintain the associated behaviors. Clear warns against tying your identity too tightly to a specific outcome, however, because this can become fragile. For example, if someone builds their identity entirely around being a successful entrepreneur, a failed business can feel like a threat to their very existence. Instead, he advocates for flexible identities that are built around values and principles rather than specific achievements. It's healthier to see yourself as someone who is resilient, creative, or curious traits that can manifest in many contexts rather than someone who is only valuable when they win. This chapter also encourages readers to be aware of the conflict that can arise when old habits are tied to outdated identities. Change becomes difficult not because of laziness or lack of motivation, but because we cling to a sense of self that no longer serves us. To move forward, we must be willing to let go of old versions of ourselves, however familiar or comforting they may be, and embrace new possibilities. This process can feel vulnerable because it involves uncertainty, but it's also the path to growth. Identity-based change is not about faking it until you make it, but about embodying the type of person you wish to be through consistent, intentional behavior. Clear closes the chapter by reaffirming that habits are not merely tools for productivity. They are tools for identity formation. When we focus on who we are becoming rather than what we are achieving, habits become personal and meaningful. This internal motivation is more sustainable than external rewards because it taps into the deepest levels of self-understanding and purpose. Changing your habits, then, is not just about improving your life. It's about redefining who you are. This chapter serves as a call to action to stop chasing results and start embodying the traits of the person you want to become. One small habit at a time. Chapter 3. How to build better habits in 4 simple steps. Imagine trying to change your life. But every time you begin, it feels like you're swimming against the current. You try harder, push more, use willpower, but your habits don't seem to stick. That's not because you're weak or undisciplined. It's because you might be working against how habits actually form. In this chapter, James Clear pulls back the curtain and shows us the engine behind all our behaviors, a 4-step habit loop that explains almost everything we do, whether we realize it or not. If you've ever wondered why you keep repeating certain behaviors, good or bad, the answer is here: cue, craving, response, reward. That's the universal cycle. It's how we form every habit in our lives, from brushing our teeth to scrolling endlessly on our phones to going for a run every morning. And once we understand this loop, we can stop trying to force change and instead design it. Let's break it down. First comes the cue, a trigger that grabs your attention. It could be a sound, a smell, a time of day, or even a feeling. Think of a notification pinging on your phone. That sound is a cue, and it makes your brain perk up. Something's happening. That's when we enter step 2, the craving. It's not the cue itself that drives us to act. It's the craving behind it. We don't want the notification sound. We want the message, the dopamine hit, the connection. Cravings are the emotional or psychological drivers behind habits. They give motivation to respond. So we move into the third phase, the response, the actual behavior. You pick up the phone and check the message. If it's something good, something that satisfies the craving, your brain logs it as a win. Which leads us to the final step, the reward. Rewards serve two purposes. They satisfy your craving, and they teach your brain this behavior is worth repeating in the future. The more times this loop repeats, the more automatic the habit becomes. Clear explains that all habits, big or small, good or destructive, are built on this exact framework. Want to eat healthier? Want to stop biting your nails? Want to start writing every day? They all rely on the same pattern. What's powerful about understanding this loop is that it gives you a roadmap. Instead of relying on motivation or discipline, you can now design better habits by aligning with how your brain naturally works. Let's make it practical. Say you want to build a habit of reading before bed. Start with the cue. Make it obvious. Maybe you leave a book on your pillow so it's the first thing you see. That triggers the behavior. Then comes the craving. You associate that book with peace, relaxation, maybe learning something inspiring. Your response is to pick it up and read. And the reward, that moment of calm before sleep, the satisfaction of progress, even just the joy of turning pages. The next night, the cue hits again, and slowly reading becomes part of who you are. But the loop works both ways. If you're trying to break a bad habit, say snacking late at night, it's the same structure. The cue might be boredom or stress. The craving is for comfort or distraction. The response is grabbing chips, and the reward is that short-term pleasure. The secret to breaking the cycle? Interrupt the cue, reframe the craving, replace the response, or dull the reward. James Clear also emphasizes that many of our habits form not because we consciously choose them, but because we stumble into them over time. Our environment sends out constant cues, and without realizing it, we respond. This is why designing your environment becomes such a powerful tool for habit change. If you want to practice guitar more, don't keep it in a closet, hang it on the wall. If you want to stop checking your phone in the morning, don't charge it beside your bed. The fewer cues you encounter for bad habits and the more cues you create for good ones, the easier behavior change becomes. Another key point is that repetition, not perfection, is the mother of habit. You don't need to do something perfectly, you just need to repeat it consistently. Each time you follow the cue craving response reward loop, even in small ways, you're reinforcing a neural pathway. Over time, that path becomes the default. That's why Clear says habits are not a finish line to be crossed, but a lifestyle to be lived. But what really elevates this chapter is how it connects the psychology of habits with our sense of identity. When you successfully complete a habit loop, even in a small way, you're not just getting a reward. You're voting for the person you want to become. Every loop reinforces a belief. I am someone who works out. I am a reader. I am disciplined. And those beliefs, layered over time, create a new identity. To make habit change stick, you don't need to change everything at once. You just need to understand this loop and then make small, intentional tweaks, what Clear calls atomic changes. The beauty of the four-step framework is that it works both as a microscope and a blueprint. You can analyze existing habits and understand what drives them, or you can reverse engineer new ones, designing each element intentionally. Ever struggled to build a habit and wondered why it never stuck? This is the chapter where the fog lifts. Clear isn't selling tricks or hacks. He's giving you a mental model for how behavior actually works. Once you learn to master the 4 laws in the upcoming chapters, make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. You'll have the tools to align your habits with your goals, your environment, and your identity. And when that alignment clicks, change no longer feels like a struggle. It becomes a natural extension of who you are. Chapter 4. The Man Who Didn't Look Right. Sometimes we can feel something is wrong without being able to explain why. A split-second reaction, a gut feeling. Something just feels off. In this chapter, James Clear opens with a story that captures this exact intuition. A group of firefighters responded to what seemed like an ordinary kitchen fire. But in the middle of putting it out, the commander suddenly yelled, "Let's get out of here!" The floor collapsed moments later. He couldn't articulate why he made that call. It just didn't feel right. This story isn't about instinct. It's about how the brain, through repeated exposure and subconscious learning, becomes a master of patterns. Over time, we don't just notice obvious cues. We start to sense the hidden ones, the ones we've been conditioned to recognize through repetition. And in the world of habits, that pattern recognition is everything. This chapter introduces the first of the 4 laws. Make it obvious. Because every habit begins with a cue, something in your environment or experience that triggers a behavior. But here's the thing. Most of us are completely unaware of the cues that drive our actions. They happen on autopilot. You pick up your phone the moment you feel bored. You open the fridge when you walk into the kitchen. You light a cigarette the second you step outside after a meal. These behaviors are so ingrained that they seem invisible. The first step to change, Clear tells us, is awareness. You can't improve a habit you don't realize exists. To illustrate this, he introduces a simple yet powerful tool, the habit scorecard. This isn't a productivity hack. It's a method for shining a light on your behavioral blind spots. The idea is to go through your day and write down every habit, every repeated action, from the moment you wake up to when you go to sleep. Then you label each one. Is it positive, neutral, or negative? For example, wake up, check phone, brush teeth, skip breakfast. The point isn't to judge yourself, but to observe. Awareness precedes improvement. You can't escape bad habits or build good ones if you're blind to what you're doing. Clear explains that the brain is a prediction machine. Over time, it learns to anticipate rewards based on cues. The more often a cue is associated with a reward, the more automatic the response becomes. That's why habits are so sticky. They become the path of least resistance, and the more you repeat them, the more invisible they become. Habits are like the background music of our lives, always playing, rarely noticed. To regain control, you need to reshape the environment where these cues exist. Because contrary to popular belief, it's not motivation that shapes behavior, it's visibility. Clear brings up a fascinating experiment. In a cafeteria, simply changing the arrangement of beverages, placing water at eye level instead of soda, led people to drink more water without thinking about it. No pep talk, no health campaign. Just subtle design. This is the power of cues. They don't yell, they whisper. But if you change what people see, you can change what they do. So, how do you make a good habit obvious? You design your cues deliberately. One of Clear's favorite tools here is implementation intention, a strategy rooted in specifying exactly when and where you'll perform a habit. For example, I will meditate for 5 minutes at 7 a.m. in my living room. It sounds basic, but research shows that being specific triples your chances of following through. The vaguer your plan, the weaker the behavior. But when a cue is tied to a specific time and place, your brain locks in. Another method is habit stacking, pairing a new habit with one you already do. Let's say every morning you make coffee. Right after that, you could write in a journal. After I brew my coffee, I will write one line about how I feel. Because your brain already recognizes the first cue, making coffee, it becomes easier to attach a second action to it. This is how new behaviors piggyback on old routines and slowly become automatic. The chapter also makes a crucial point about environmental design. Most of us think habits are formed by willpower, but in truth, they're formed by exposure. You don't need more discipline, you need better surroundings. If you want to read more, put a book on your pillow. If you want to practice guitar, put the instrument in the center of your room. Want to snack less? Hide the junk food. The less friction between you and a positive behavior, the more likely it is to happen. And the reverse is true as well. The more friction you create around a bad habit, the less likely it becomes. James Clear explains that we live in a constant loop of cues and responses. But the more we become aware of what triggers our behavior, the more power we have to shape our habits. It's not about being perfect. It's about becoming intentional. He reminds us that we're not victims of our habits. We're the architects of them, and that architecture starts with what we see, hear, feel, and experience every day. Our environment is sending us messages, whether we realize it or not. The key is to listen, take note, and then take control. By the end of this chapter, one truth becomes clear. To build better habits, you must first make the invisible visible, and once you can see your patterns, you can begin to shift them, one cue at a time. Chapter 5. The best way to start a new habit. Starting a new habit can feel like standing at the base of a mountain. You want to climb it? You know the view from the top will be worth it. But figuring out how to take the first few steps often stops people in their tracks. In this chapter, James Clear dives into one of the most critical phases of habit formation, getting started. He explains that while many people dream of change, very few know how to initiate it. The secret lies not in motivation or sheer willpower, but in creating a system that makes the first step obvious, specific, and easy to follow. Clear introduces us to a powerful concept called implementation intention. This is a simple formula that takes your vague intention, like, "I want to exercise more," and turns it into a clear action plan. I will behavior at time in location. For instance, I will do 10 push-ups at 7 a.m. in my living room. When you phrase your habit like this, you're not just making a wish. You're programming your brain with a clear instruction. It removes ambiguity, which is the enemy of action. When you know exactly what, when, and where, you're far more likely to follow through, but even then, knowing what to do isn't always enough. The brain craves connection. It thrives on rhythm and routine. That's where the second tool comes in. Habit stacking. Instead of relying on motivation alone to start a new habit, you can tether it to something you already do consistently. Think of habits like train cars. If you can latch a new one onto a train that's already in motion, it gains momentum. For example, after I brush my teeth, I will meditate for 1 minute. Or, after I pour my morning coffee, I'll write down 3 things I'm grateful for. By anchoring the new behavior to an established one, you harness the reliability of existing patterns. Habit stacking not only builds consistency, it builds trust within yourself. The more you link your desired behaviors to things already embedded in your life, the easier it becomes to establish a new normal. Over time, those little stacked habits transform into routines that require less thought and energy. And that's the real goal. Clear wants us to stop relying on willpower and start depending on systems. Because systems, unlike motivation, don't fluctuate with your mood or the weather. Clear gives plenty of examples to show how these tools can work in everyday life. Want to start journaling? Stack it right after breakfast. Want to stretch more? Do it after you take off your work shoes. The magic lies in the predictability. When a habit becomes part of a sequence, it no longer feels like something extra you have to remember. It becomes automatic, like brushing your teeth or checking your phone in the morning. But the beauty of implementation intention and habit stacking isn't just about behavior change. It's about identity change. Every time you follow through on a small promise to yourself, you reinforce the belief that you're the kind of person who follows through, that you're not just someone who wants to change, you're someone who does. Over time, these small actions become proof of your new identity. James Clear makes a powerful point here. Building better habits isn't about grand transformations. It's about clarity, consistency, and connection. Clarity in defining the habit, consistency in repeating it, and connection to routines you already trust. When you combine these forces, starting a new habit doesn't feel daunting anymore. It feels natural. In the end, Chapter 5 reminds us that starting is the hardest part until we make it easy. And making it easy means removing the guesswork, attaching the new to the familiar, and letting momentum do the rest. The next time you want to build a habit, don't just wish for change. Write it down, anchor it to something real, and watch it grow. Chapter 6. Motivation is overrated. Environment often matters more. We often think success is about willpower, that some people are just born more disciplined or more motivated than others. But James Clear challenges that idea head-on. In this chapter, he argues that motivation is fleeting. It comes and goes. But your environment, that's constant. And it shapes your behavior in ways most people never realize. Imagine you walk into a room and see a bowl of apples on the table. You might grab one without thinking. Now imagine that same room, but the apples are hidden in a drawer and a plate of cookies is on the table instead. Which are you more likely to eat? The cookies, of course. Not because you lack willpower, but because the environment was designed to cue that behavior. Clear explains that we often attribute actions to personal failure when the real issue is environmental design. Your surroundings either pull you toward good habits or bad ones, and the truth is, most people live in environments that work against their goals. It's not that they don't want to be healthier, more focused, or more productive. It's that their environment is constantly nudging them in the wrong direction. So, instead of relying on self-control, Clear suggests we rely on environmental cues. These are the small signals around you. Sounds, smells that prompt behavior. Think of how the smell of popcorn makes you want to eat at the movies, or how seeing your running shoes by the door reminds you to go for a jog. Our brains are wired to respond to these signals, and Clear wants us to use that wiring to our advantage. The goal is to design your space to support the habits you want. Want to read more? Leave a book on your pillow or desk. Want to stop scrolling late at night? Put your phone in another room. Want to drink more water? Fill a big bottle and leave it where you work. These tiny shifts seem simple, but they can fundamentally change the way you behave without you having to try harder. Clear gives real-life examples too, like a hospital that increased water consumption by moving bottled water closer to the checkout area without changing anything else. No motivational posters, no education campaign, just changing the environment. That's the power of context. He emphasizes that every habit begins with a cue, and most cues come from your surroundings. So, if you want to change your habits, change your environment. And that doesn't just mean your physical space, it includes your digital space too. If you're trying to focus, clean up your desktop, silence your phone, log out of distracting apps. Make the desired behavior easier to start and the undesired one harder to fall into. Clear introduces the idea of environmental priming. This means arranging your surroundings so that they subtly nudge you in the right direction before you even begin, like laying out your gym clothes the night before or prepping your lunch in advance. When your environment is already in harmony with your intentions, taking action becomes almost effortless. One powerful tip Clear gives is to create zones in your living or workspace. For example, have a specific chair where you read, a desk only for deep work, a table just for meals, and a bed strictly for sleeping. This way, your brain starts associating certain behaviors with certain locations. When you sit in the reading chair, your mind slips into reading mode without resistance. When you lie in bed, your mind prepares for sleep. You build mental grooves over time simply by creating physical boundaries. But what if you share a small space or can control your environment completely? Clear suggests managing what you can. Even small changes, a headphone for silence, a tiny ritual to signal a shift in activity, or rearranging your phone apps can create new behavioral cues. You don't need a perfect space, you just need intentional design. He also warns us to beware of invisible cues. These are the ones we don't notice but still respond to, like keeping your phone in your pocket, which leads to checking it constantly, or having junk food within arm's reach. The trick is to become aware of them and consciously remove or replace them. Out of sight, out of mind isn't just a cliché, it's a cognitive reality. In closing, Clear reminds us, your environment is the invisible hand that shapes your behavior. If you want to change your habits, stop blaming yourself and start redesigning your space. Make good habits obvious, make bad habits invisible. Stop trying to be someone you're not through willpower and start becoming who you want to be through smarter design. By controlling your environment, you take control of the most powerful force in behavior change, not motivation, not discipline, but the world you move through every single day. Chapter 7. The secret to self-control. We often think of self-control as a battle, a war between who we are and who we want to be. We picture it as gritting our teeth, resisting temptation, and pushing through pain. But in this chapter, James Clear offers a much gentler, smarter truth. The best way to win a battle against temptation is to avoid fighting it in the first place. Self-control, he says, isn't about becoming superhuman. It's not about being stronger than your cravings. It's about not putting yourself in situations where those cravings are activated to begin with. The secret isn't being more disciplined. It's being more strategic. Clear begins with a powerful observation. Those who seem to have the most self-control actually use it the least. Why? Because they've carefully designed their lives to minimize temptation. Their environments don't constantly test their willpower. They've pre-decided the path of least resistance, so good behavior happens automatically. Let's take an example. Imagine someone who eats healthy all the time. It's tempting to think, wow, they must have amazing but look closer. You'll likely find they don't keep junk food in the house. Their fridge is full of fresh produce. Their snacks are pre-portioned. They don't visit fast food places. In short, they've removed the triggers that would cause a struggle in the first place. They're not resisting temptation. They're simply not exposed to it. Clear connects this insight to the 4 stages of habit formation. Cue, craving, response, and reward. The cue is the spark. Without it, the rest of the chain never even starts. That's why avoiding the cue is so powerful. If you never see the cookie, you don't crave the cookie. No craving, no reaction. Problem solved before it begins. He references a fascinating historical study, Vietnam War soldiers who became addicted to heroin overseas. Many people feared they'd bring that addiction home, but surprisingly, when they returned to the US, most of them quit immediately. Why? Because their environment changed. The triggers were gone. Their surroundings no longer whispered use. This shows how tightly habit is linked to location and cue, and how removal is often more effective than resistance. This is the heart of the message. Self-control is easier when you don't need it. If you're constantly exposed to temptation, even the strongest willpower will eventually break down. But if you never put yourself in that situation, you've already won. So how do we apply this in daily life? First, we need to become cue-aware. What are the environmental triggers that start your bad habits? Is it seeing your phone on your desk that makes you check it every 5 minutes? Is it walking past the kitchen that leads to snacking? Is it turning on the TV out of habit rather than desire? Once you identify your cues, eliminate them. Out of sight, out of mind works because we are cue-responsive creatures. Move your phone to another room during work. Hide the junk food on a high shelf. Cancel streaming services if they're wasting your evenings. It sounds extreme, but Clear reminds us every decision you ought frees up energy for things that matter. It's not about living like a monk, it's about being intentional. If you're trying to stop drinking, don't hang out at bars. If you want to read more, put books where you'll see them. If you want to stop procrastinating, block the websites that pull you in. The fewer decisions you have to make in the moment, the better your long-term choices will be. Clear also emphasizes identity alignment. The more we see ourselves as someone who doesn't need to resist because they simply don't do that anymore, the easier habits become. A former smoker who says, "I'm trying to quit," still sees themselves as a smoker, but one who says, "I don't smoke," has rewritten their identity. And that identity shapes every choice thereafter. We often put ourselves in harm's way, thinking we'll have the strength to resist. But it's better to walk a different route entirely. Don't test your willpower. Test your wisdom. Can you build a life where the temptations are weaker than your goals? Clear summarizes this with a simple but profound truth. Disciplined people structure their lives in a way that doesn't require heroic willpower. And if you want to master your habits, that's the model to follow. Don't rely on force. Rely on design. To wrap up, Chapter 7 isn't a lecture on how to become stronger or tougher. It's an invitation to become more thoughtful. If you want to change your behavior, don't try to overpower your impulses. Remove the situations that give those impulses a voice. Build a space, a system, a schedule, and a strategy that makes the right choices feel natural and the wrong ones invisible. Because the real secret to self-control isn't about fighting temptation. It's about never needing to fight it at all. At the end of the chapter, Clear reinforces one key idea. Habits are not just actions. They're emotional experiences. If you want them to last, they must feel rewarding, joyful, and meaningful. That's what makes a habit magnetic. That's what keeps you coming back. So here's the takeaway. Pair things you have to do with things you want to do. That's temptation bundling. Surround yourself with people who naturally reinforce your desired habits. Reframe your mindset to make good habits feel like gifts, not chores. Layer joy, ritual, and emotion into your routines. And most of all, make your habits attractive and they'll pull you in effortlessly. Because when something feels good, you don't need to force it. You simply follow the pull. Chapter 8. How to make a habit irresistible. Imagine your habits like magnets. Some pull you in effortlessly, scrolling social media, binge-watching shows, grabbing a snack. Others, the ones you know are good for you, reading, exercising, journaling, feel like a grind. Why is it so easy to do what's bad for us and so hard to do what's good? In Chapter 8, James Clear reveals a simple truth that changes everything. We repeat behaviors not because they're good or bad, but because they're attractive. Every habit starts with a cue, but what keeps it going is craving, a powerful emotional desire. We crave habits that promise rewards, satisfaction, or relief. If something feels rewarding, we'll come back to it. So the real trick isn't to force ourselves to do the right thing. It's to make the right thing feel irresistible. Clear explains that the second law of behavior change is make it attractive, and this chapter dives deep into how to do exactly that. Let's begin with a foundational principle from behavioral psychology. The more attractive an opportunity is, the more likely it is to become habit-forming. This is why your phone buzz is so compelling. It's not the sound itself, but the promise of a message, a like, a reward. That promise sparks craving. Humans are driven by a dopamine-driven feedback loop. Dopamine isn't just released when we experience pleasure. It's also released in anticipation of pleasure. That means just seeing a cue associated with a reward can light up your brain. The sight of your favorite coffee shop, the smell of popcorn, or the feel of your couch triggers a desire before any action is taken. This is where Clear introduces a powerful strategy: temptation bundling. Temptation bundling means pairing an action you want to do with an action you need to do. It's like saying, I'll only watch Netflix while I'm on the treadmill, or I only listen to my favorite podcast while cleaning the kitchen. This technique harnesses craving to your advantage. You take the natural attraction of one behavior and use it to anchor another habit to it. This works because the brain starts to associate the reward, entertainment, with the habit, exercise, making the habit more enjoyable and thus more likely to stick. Suddenly, the treadmill isn't something you dread. It becomes your personal cinema. That craving for fun now fuels your consistency. Clear also discusses how culture shapes attractiveness. We don't just imitate what's pleasurable, we imitate what's socially rewarded. We want to fit in, be admired, and gain approval. So we tend to adopt habits that are praised by the close, our friends and family, the many, our larger community, the powerful, those we respect or look up to. This means one of the most overlooked tools for habit change is your environment of people. Want to get fit? Join a gym where fitness is the norm. Want to write more? Surround yourself with writers. We subconsciously adopt the behaviors of those around us because we crave connection. That craving becomes the emotional fuel that drives new routines. Here's where it gets practical. Clear says, if you want to make a habit attractive, you have to learn to associate it with positive emotion. Don't just go to the gym, go with a friend. Don't just eat healthy. Make your meals colorful and creative. Don't just wake up early. Enjoy the quiet sunrise with a good cup of coffee. The more enjoyable the experience, the more likely it'll stick. He gives a brilliant tip: reframe your habits. Instead of saying, I have to wake up early, say, I get to start my day peacefully before the world wakes up. Instead of, I need to work out, say, I get to build strength and confidence today. This shift in language turns obligation into opportunity, and opportunity into attraction. Another subtle but powerful tool Clear introduces is creating motivation rituals. This means building a tiny reward into the start of your habit to get your mind excited. It might be lighting a scented candle before journaling, playing a favorite song before starting work, or brewing a great cup of tea before reading. These little pleasures pull you toward your routine, and remember, craving always comes before action. So if you want consistent action, you need consistent craving. The goal isn't to force discipline, it's to create desire. And that desire is something you can engineer. Chapter 9. The role of family and friends in shaping your habits. Humans are social creatures. From the moment we're born, our behaviors, beliefs, and habits are deeply influenced by those around us. In this chapter, James Clear explores one of the most powerful yet often overlooked forces behind habit formation, our social environment. Imagine you want to quit smoking. You try hard, but every time you hang out with friends who smoke, the urge pulls you back. Or picture trying to start a workout routine, but your family spends most evenings on the couch watching TV. Suddenly, your goals feel like a lonely battle. Clear shows us that habits don't develop in isolation. They grow within the fertile soil of social groups. The second law of behavior change is to make habits attractive, and one of the most compelling ways to do that is through social belonging. We naturally imitate behaviors of the groups we identify with, and our brain rewards us for fitting in. This means the people you spend the most time with shape your habits in subtle, continuous ways. Clear identifies 3 social groups that influence us: the close, family and friends who form our immediate social circle; the many, the broader community or cultural group we belong to; the powerful role models, leaders or people we admire. Each plays a role in molding our habits and identity. Within our close circle, habits spread through unconscious mimicry. Think about how laughter is contagious or how moods can ripple through a group. If you're surrounded by people who prioritize healthy living, exercising regularly, or reading, you're more likely to adopt those habits yourself. Conversely, if unhealthy habits dominate your social scene, breaking free becomes tougher. Clear cites studies demonstrating this phenomenon. For example, research shows that when a close friend quits smoking, your chances of quitting increase significantly. The same applies to obesity, exercise, and even happiness. Social networks create behavioral cascades where habits ripple outward. The broader cultural norms, the many, also guide what behaviors feel normal or desirable. If you live in a community where drinking alcohol every weekend is the norm, abstaining feels awkward or isolating. But if your culture celebrates mindfulness and moderation, you'll find it easier to adopt those habits. Culture sets the stage for what's acceptable or cool. And then there are the powerful, people we look up to, from mentors to celebrities. We model their habits because we associate their behaviors with success and status. Following their lead can be motivating, but Clear warns us to choose these role models wisely. Not all admired habits are healthy or aligned with your goals. One of the key takeaways is that identity is social. We don't just form habits to improve ourselves privately. We form habits to express who we are to the world. When your social environment values certain behaviors, you're motivated to embody those traits to fit in, gain approval, or feel a sense of belonging. This is where Clear's advice becomes practical. If you want to change your habits, start by looking at your social context. Are you surrounded by people who reflect the identity you want to build? If not, consider seeking out new groups or communities that do. Join clubs, online forums, or classes where your desired habits are the norm. Surround yourself with people who live the life you aspire to. He also emphasizes the power of accountability partners. Sharing your goals with someone who supports you creates social pressure and motivation. When you know someone else is watching, you're more likely to stick to your commitments. This isn't about judgment, it's about encouragement and shared progress. Clear warns against toxic environments that pull you away from your goals. If your social circle resists your changes, it can cause friction or doubt. In these cases, strengthening your new identity through external communities becomes essential. In summary, Chapter 9 highlights that habit change isn't just an internal struggle, it's a social journey. The people around you either lift you toward your best self or pull you back into old patterns. By consciously choosing your social environment, you harness a powerful force that makes good habits easier, more natural, and deeply rewarding. Chapter 10. How to find and fix the causes of your bad habits. We all have habits we wish we could break. Overeating, procrastinating, checking our phones too much, staying up late, reacting with anger. But here's the hard truth. You can't just snap your fingers and delete a bad habit. These patterns are deeply rooted, often formed over years, and they serve a purpose, even if they hurt you in the long run. That's why, in Chapter 10, James Clear invites us to stop treating symptoms and start understanding the real causes behind our bad habits. The core message of this chapter is clear. Every habit, even the destructive ones, is a solution to a problem. Smoking might relieve stress. Scrolling through social media might temporarily ease boredom or loneliness. Overeating might soothe emotional discomfort. The behavior itself might be harmful, but it exists for a reason. And if you want to change it, you have to understand what it's doing for you. Clear introduces the idea of cue-induced craving. Habits are triggered by cues, something in your environment, your emotional state, or your routine. But the real driving force is the craving, the feeling you're trying to satisfy. This means bad habits often begin when you're trying to avoid something uncomfortable. Anxiety, pain, fear, uncertainty. For example, think about procrastination. On the surface, it looks like laziness. But dig deeper and you'll often find fear. Fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, or fear of discomfort. So you avoid the task to avoid the feeling. The real problem isn't the behavior, it's the emotion behind it. To change a bad habit, Clear urges us to reframe the craving and find a healthier, more effective solution to the problem that caused the habit in the first place. If you overeat to reduce stress, can you learn deep breathing meditation or journaling as an alternative outlet? If you scroll endlessly on your phone out of boredom, can you replace it with a walk, a book, or a phone call with a friend? But before you can fix the problem, you have to spot the pattern. That's where awareness becomes your most powerful weapon. You can't change a habit you're not even aware of. Clear recommends keeping a habit scorecard, a list of your daily habits, written out without judgment. Just notice, observe, track. You're not trying to shame yourself. You're trying to understand your behavior like a detective at a crime scene, curious and analytical. This simple exercise can be eye-opening. You begin to notice the unconscious loops that shape your day. I wake up, check my phone, I feel anxious, so I open the fridge. I sit down to work, but I get distracted by email. Patterns emerge. Cues become visible. Only then can you begin to intervene. Clear emphasizes the importance of identity once again. Bad habits often persist because they align with an outdated or unexamined version of yourself. Maybe you believe you're a night owl, so you stay up late even when you're exhausted. Or you believe you're someone who just hates exercise, so you avoid it. But when you start building a new identity, I'm someone who values rest, or I'm becoming a person who takes care of their body, your behaviors can follow suit. To stop a bad habit, make it invisible, unattractive, difficult, and unsatisfying. These are the 4 laws of behavior change in reverse. If checking social media is a problem, try logging out, deleting the app, or keeping your phone in another room. If you always snack in front of the TV, break the cue by rearranging your environment. Don't rely on willpower alone. Design friction into the habit. But even more powerful than changing the environment is changing your story. Clear reminds us. The story you tell yourself about your habits is often more important than the habits themselves. If you believe you're a slave to your cravings, you'll act like one. But if you believe you have the power to pause, reflect, and choose differently, your habits begin to lose their grip. He offers practical suggestions like using implementation intentions, clear plans that say, if situation X arises, then I will do behavior Y. For instance, if I feel the urge to eat when I'm not hungry, I drink a glass of water and take 3 deep breaths. This prepares your brain to act differently in familiar situations. Another strategy is to use temptation bundling, pairing a behavior you need to do with something you enjoy. If you dread exercising, watch your favorite show only while working out. You're not just breaking a bad habit, you're building a better one in its place. Ultimately, Clear helps us see bad habits not as moral failures, but as misdirected solutions. They're often signals, clues to deeper needs we haven't yet learned how to meet in healthy ways. When we approach them with curiosity instead of guilt, we open the door to meaningful, lasting change. Chapter 11. Walk slowly, but never backward. James Clear opens this chapter with a calming but profound mantra. Walk slowly, but never backward. In a world obsessed with hacks and shortcuts, this principle cuts through the noise. Progress doesn't have to be fast, it just has to be forward. He reminds us that building good habits and breaking bad ones is a game of consistency over intensity. It's better to show up every day and improve one than to push yourself so hard that you burn out, stop, and regress. The real magic of habit formation lies in staying in motion, no matter how small the steps. But let's be honest. Consistency is hard. It's not flashy. It's not thrilling. It's doing the same things day in, day out. Even when you're tired, even when no one's watching, even when it feels like nothing is changing, that's where discipline and identity come into play. Clear makes a key point here. Success is the product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformations. If you want to become fit, you don't need to run a marathon tomorrow, you just need to exercise regularly. If you want to become a writer, you don't need to write a novel in a weekend. You just need to write a little every day. What matters is the direction you're heading, not how fast you're going. The danger comes when we stop showing up altogether. Missing one workout or one journaling session isn't a disaster. But when missing once becomes missing twice, and then becomes your new normal, that's when backward steps begin. Clear calls this the second mistake. The first mistake is unavoidable. It happens. Life gets in the way. But the second mistake? That one's a choice, and it's the one that breaks the streak. To protect against this downward spiral, Clear suggests a mindset shift. Never miss twice. Missing once is human. Missing twice is the beginning of a new and often bad habit. So when you fall off, get back on immediately. Shrug off the slip-up and recommit to your system. That's resilience. The key here is not perfection, but recovery. The best performers aren't perfect. They're just better at bouncing back. They know that motivation fades, but habits anchored in identity last. When you see yourself as someone who trains or someone who writes, you return to the behavior not because you feel like it, but because it's who you are. Clear also talks about tracking your habits to reinforce consistency. Seeing a visual streak, like an unbroken chain on a calendar, can be motivating. It becomes a game. Don't break the chain. But he cautions not to become so obsessed with tracking that you lose the joy or forget the purpose of the habit itself. What if you're sick? What if you're busy? In those moments, do something, even the tiniest version of your habit. If your habit is going to the gym, maybe all you do today is 5 push-ups at home. If your habit is writing, maybe you just jot down 1 sentence. It's not about the intensity. It's about maintaining momentum. Clear shares a powerful example of this in professional sports. Elite athletes don't crush every workout. They don't break records every time they train, but they always show up. They practice the fundamentals. They stay in the groove. That's how mastery is built. Not through bursts of greatness, but through sustainable repetition. And yet, even with all this, we must learn to be compassionate with ourselves. Consistency is not a straight line. There will be bad days, low moments, unexpected setbacks. What matters most is what you do after those moments. Do you judge yourself and spiral, or do you forgive yourself and return? Clear suggests embracing the idea of non-zero days. Even if your effort is tiny, even if it feels like you did almost nothing, if you did something, it counts. It builds the muscle. It keeps the system alive. Habits don't have to be huge to be meaningful. They just have to keep happening. He also reminds us that progress is often invisible at first. You might work for weeks without seeing results. That's normal. The breakthrough comes later. The key is trusting the process, even when it feels like nothing is happening. Remember, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. The ultimate takeaway from this chapter is deeply comforting and empowering. You don't need to be a genius. You don't need perfect discipline. You don't need extreme motivation. You just need to keep walking forward, slowly, consistently, intentionally. And if you do that, if you keep showing up, you won't just build good habits. You'll build a resilient identity, one that can weather storms, one that can last, because success isn't a moment, it's a direction. And here's the beautiful part. Once you reduce the effort required to act on a good habit, something shifts. That habit begins to feel natural, automatic, effortless. You're no longer pushing uphill. The habit starts to carry you forward. Clear shares that one of the biggest obstacles to consistency is simply starting. Once you're in motion, continuing becomes easier. So if you reduce the effort needed to begin, you increase your odds of continuing. This is why rituals and cues are so important. They prepare your brain to enter a new mode. A pre-game routine, for instance, can signal your mind, now it's time to focus. These tiny steps act as ramps into more meaningful action. He emphasizes again, focus on setup, not struggle. Don't waste willpower battling against your surroundings. Invest that energy in designing your surroundings instead. By now, the message is clear. Make it easy, or it won't happen, that not laziness, that human nature, and wise people work with their nature, not against it. So the final wisdom of chapter 12 is simple but profound. If you want better results, don't push harder. Build a better system. Make it easier to do what matters most. And when you master the art of reducing friction, your habits become not only sustainable, but unstoppable. Chapter 12. The Law of Least Effort. Why is it so hard to stick with good habits even when we want to? And why do we fall into bad habits without even noticing? In Chapter 12, James Clear brings forward a deep insight into human behavior. We naturally gravitate toward the path of least resistance. Our brains are wired to conserve energy. We seek convenience. We are drawn to whatever is easiest, whether it's turning on Netflix instead of reading, ordering fast food instead of cooking, or scrolling social media instead of working on our goals. This isn't a character flaw. It's biology. Our ancestors needed to conserve effort to survive. Energy was precious, so the brain evolved to favor efficiency, to choose habits that required less physical or mental work. Understanding this truth leads us to a simple but powerful strategy. Make good habits easier and bad habits harder. If you want to change your behavior, don't rely on motivation. Don't try to will your way through friction. Instead, redesign your environment to support the behaviors you want. Clear introduces the law of least effort. Humans will naturally choose the option that requires the least amount of work. So, instead of trying to be more disciplined, try to make the right actions, the default actions. Structure your surroundings so that the easy thing is the right thing. For example, if you want to eat healthier, don't just tell yourself to resist junk food. Remove it from your home. Stock your fridge with ready-to-eat fruits and veggies. If you want to read more, place a book on your pillow so it's the first thing you see before sleep. Want to exercise more? Lay out your workout clothes the night before. Remove steps. Reduce friction. Automate the habit. The key isn't to force behavior, but to guide it. You're not trying to overpower your instincts. You're working with them. You shaping your environment so that good behavior becomes the easiest option. It becomes the path of least resistance. Clear gives real examples of how small design changes can trigger big behavioral shifts. Supermarkets that place fruits at eye level sell more of them. Cafeterias that rearrange trays to make water more accessible increase water consumption. Even nations have applied this, like how countries that automatically enroll citizens into organ donation programs have significantly higher participation rates than those that require people to opt in. Why does this work? Because we do what's easy, not what's best. This leads to one of the chapter's biggest takeaways. Environment is the invisible hand that shapes human behavior. Most of us think we make decisions based on self-control or logic, but more often than not, we act on what's right in front of us, what's visible, accessible, and convenient. So how do we apply this practically? Clear offers a tool: environment design. Start by identifying the habits you want and then build a space that nudges you toward them. If you want to practice guitar more, leave it in the center of your living room. If you want to cook at home more, clean your kitchen and organize your tools for fast access. If you want to waste less time on your phone, put it in another room when working, or delete addictive apps. On the flip side, if you want to break a bad habit, add friction. Make it harder to indulge. Hide the remote. Unplug the TV. Turn your phone to grayscale. Cancel subscriptions that pull you in. Clear reminds us, habits are not just about discipline. They're about decisions made easy or hard by your environment. But there's another layer to this. The people around us are also part of our environment. If you spend time with people who make healthy choices, you're more likely to mirror them. If you're surrounded by co-workers who slack off, you'll likely do the same. Social environment matters as much as physical environment. Chapter 13. How to stop procrastinating by using the 2-minute rule. Procrastination isn't about laziness, it's about friction, that invisible resistance we feel when we know we should do something but we delay, we overthink, we feel overwhelmed, and before we know it, we're distracted, avoiding the very thing that could move our life forward. James Clear opens Chapter 13 with a simple but powerful truth. Starting is the hardest part. Whether it's writing, exercising, cleaning, or meditating, we often build tasks up in our minds into something massive and intimidating. But in reality, once we begin, the momentum kicks in, the mental fog lifts, and we realize the action was never as painful as we imagined. So the goal is simple. Get started. Not finish. Not perfect. Just begin. And to help us do that, Clear introduces a deceptively simple strategy. The 2-minute rule. What is it? When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. That's it. Want to build a habit of reading? Start with read 1 page. Want to exercise regularly? Try. Put on your workout clothes. Want to write more? Begin with open your notebook. These actions are so easy, so ridiculously simple, that there's no excuse not to do them. They are gateway habits, small beginnings that naturally lead into the real behavior you want to build. Clear emphasizes that this rule isn't about tricking yourself, it's about creating rituals of entry. You're not committing to an entire workout or writing session. You're committing to the act of showing up. Once you show up, continuing becomes easier. This is how momentum works. Action leads to motivation, not the other way around. A key insight from this chapter is the distinction between being in motion and taking action. Motion feels productive. It's planning, strategizing, organizing, but it doesn't produce results. Action, on the other hand, is what actually moves the needle. Let's say you want to get fit. Motion looks like researching workout plans, buying new gear, watching fitness videos. But action is doing the push-ups, lifting the weights, sweating. The 2-minute rule forces you into action. It breaks the inertia. And here's why it works so well. You can't improve a habit you're not doing. You can't optimize what you haven't started. No matter how small the step, a step in the right direction, and consistency, even with small beginnings, creates identity. The person who reads 1 page every night is a reader. The person who stretches for 2 minutes daily is becoming more active. Identity follows habit, and habits are born from action. But what about goals that require more than 2 minutes? Clear's advice. Make the 2-minute version your entry point, not the final destination. Think of it as a ritual that reinforces your desired identity. Want to meditate for 20 minutes a day? Your 2-minute habit might be sit on the floor and close your eyes. From there, you often go further, not because you have to, but because you've already begun. Clear gives a brilliant example of a man who lost over 100 pounds, and it started with one ridiculously simple rule. Go to the gym, but stay only 5 minutes. That's it. 5 minutes. No workouts, no sweat. Just build the habit of going. What happened? After weeks of just showing up, the man began doing more naturally. His brain accepted the habit. His identity began shifting. I'm the kind of person who goes to the gym. From there, real change took root, not through force, but through flow. This is the brilliance of the 2-minute rule. It bypasses resistance. It works with your psychology. Because most of the time, we're not avoiding the action. We're avoiding the start of the action. Clear also warns, don't confuse small habits with low standards. The point isn't to stay at 2 minutes forever. It's to become the person who does the thing consistently. Once that identity is formed, the rest becomes easier. Longer sessions, deeper focus, greater results, they all grow from that small seed. Let's put this into a real-life framework. You want to build a habit? Ask, what's the 2-minute version of this? You want to break a habit? Ask, what's the smallest friction I can introduce to slow it down? And always remember, the key to mastering habits is starting them over and over, every day. Like laying a single brick until you built a castle. Progress doesn't require giant leaps, it requires daily nudges in the right direction. So the takeaway from chapter 13 is simple, but transformational. Make it so easy you can say no, focus on showing up. Do it for 2 minutes and let that be enough. For now the rest will follow. Your greatest change doesn't start with effort, it starts with ease. And once you learn to show up, you'll discover something magical. Tiny actions compound into powerful identity shifts. This isn't just habit building, it's self-mastery 1 minute at a time. Chapter 14, How to Make Good Habits, Inevitable and Bad Habits. Impossible. Most of us approach habit change with willpower alone, gritting our teeth and hoping we'll be strong enough to resist temptation when it shows up. But in this chapter, James Clear flips the script. He argues that success doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from designing smarter systems. If you want to make good habits inevitable and bad ones nearly impossible, you need to eliminate friction for the behaviors you want and add barriers to the ones you don't. It's not about self-control. It's about environment control. Let's break it down. Think about how easy it is to watch TV. You sit down. The remote is within reach. The screen is already connected to Netflix. And boom, you're in episode 6 before you realize it. Now compare that to reading a book, which might be in another room or buried in your bag. The difference? Friction. The easier a behavior is, the more likely we are to do it. Clear introduces a brilliant strategy here, the commitment device. A commitment device is a decision you make in the present that locks in better behavior for your future self. It's like building a moat around your future actions, protecting your goals from your momentary impulses. For example, if you want to eat healthier, you can unsubscribe from food delivery apps or buy only healthy groceries. If you want to spend less time on social media, you can delete apps or log out after each session. The key idea is to make your bad habits inconvenient and your good habits automatic. One compelling example he gives is the story of Victor Hugo. When struggling to finish a book on deadline, Hugo locked away all his clothes so he couldn't leave the house, and the only thing left to do was write. That's a commitment device. It removes the option to escape and makes the desired action inevitable. Now, how do we make good habits unavoidable? Clear offers several strategies, but one of the most powerful is automation. Use technology, schedules, or rules to make good habits consistent. Automate your savings so you don't have to remember. Set a daily time block for writing, working out, or meditating. When something is scheduled, when it's wired into your system, it stops being a question of motivation. It becomes a routine. He also encourages creating one-time decisions that shape your environment for the long haul. Buying a water filter so you drink more water. Setting up auto payments to save money. Rearranging your home so your guitar is out in the open and your phone is out of reach. These small strategic choices remove the need for daily willpower. They make good habits your default mode. What's especially powerful about this chapter is the idea that you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems, and the best systems are the ones where the path to success is the path of least resistance. The reverse is also true. If you want to kill a bad habit, don't try to resist it. Make it difficult. Add friction. Make it painful. Cancel your streaming subscription. Give your friend control over your social media passwords. Put your phone in another room while you work. The harder it is to act on your bad habits, the less power they have. Clear also talks about the role of identity, here reaffirming the idea that behavior change is identity change. Every time you follow through on a good habit, you reinforce the identity you want to build, and when your environment is aligned with your desired identity, change becomes effortless. So if you want to be the kind of person who writes every day, designs an environment where writing is the default. If you want to be someone who doesn't smoke, make it inconvenient to access cigarettes and surround yourself with people who support that identity. In the end, Chapter 14 gives you this liberating truth. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be prepared. By using commitment devices, smart design, and one-time decisions, you can build a world where good habits happen without force and bad habits wither from lack of fuel. It's not about discipline. It's about design. And the best habits don't rely on effort. They rely on structure. In the end, Chapter 15 reminds us that habit change isn't about discipline alone. It's about design. You don't need more willpower. You need better feedback. Make the new behavior feel good. Make the bad one feel uncomfortable. And let your brain do what it naturally does. Seek pleasure and avoid pain. This is the cardinal rule. Behaviors that are immediately rewarded get repeated. Behaviors that are immediately punished get avoided. The sooner you feel successful, the faster the habit takes root. So stack those wins. Track your growth. And above all, make good habits feel like something you want to do, not just something you should do. Because when your habits feel good, you don't need to force them. They carry you forward. Chapter 15. The cardinal rule of behavior change. At the heart of every lasting habit is a simple rule. We repeat behaviors that are immediately rewarded and avoid ones that are immediately punished. This is the cardinal rule of behavior change, and it governs how habits are formed or broken over time. In this chapter, James Clear zooms in on one of the most overlooked aspects of habit formation, the role of immediate rewards. Now, let's be real. Many of the habits we want to build are good for us in the long run, but they don't feel great in the moment. Waking up early, saving money, working out, studying, these actions don't always deliver instant pleasure. On the other hand, bad habits, like scrolling social media, eating junk food, or procrastinating, often come with immediate satisfaction, even if they hurt us long term. So what happens? We're drawn towards short-term pleasure and away from delayed gratification. That's human nature. But here's the good news. You can hack this system. You can make good habits more rewarding now, not just later. And by doing so, you give your brain a reason to repeat them. Clear explains this through the concept of immediate returns versus delayed returns. In the immediate return environment, actions have instant consequences, like in ancient times when eating a poisonous berry meant immediate sickness. In the delayed return environment which we live in today, actions often lead to results far in the future, like exercising today for better health years from now, or investing money you won't touch for decades. Our brains are wired for the first kind of environment. That's why habits that offer quick wins, like eating sugar or getting a like on Instagram, are so addictive. They give your brain what it wants, fast feedback. To build better habits, we have to bring future rewards into the present. That means attaching something satisfying right after completing a positive habit. Why? Because what is immediately rewarded gets repeated. Clear gives us the key technique here. Habit stacking with immediate reinforcement. This is when you pair your new habit with something pleasurable. For example, after I work out, I'll drink my favorite smoothie. After I save money, I'll transfer a small amount to a fun fund for something I enjoy. After I clean the house, I'll play 10 minutes of my favorite video game. These tiny reinforcements train your brain to crave the action. Not because of the action itself, but because of what comes after. It's not bribery. It's neuroscience. And it works. Clear also highlights the danger of unrewarded good habits. Think about it. If you finish a workout and immediately jump into a stressful meeting, your brain starts to associate exercise with anxiety, not relief. That's a recipe for burnout and avoidance. You have to close the habit loop with a positive feeling. Now what about bad habits? Here, the principle flips. What is immediately punished gets avoided. But the problem is, many bad habits feel great at first. The punishment is delayed. The solution? Make the consequences of bad habits immediate. This could mean setting up systems like accountability partners who will know if you skip your commitment, habit contracts where you lose money or privileges if you break a rule, public commitments that raise the stakes. The goal is to bring immediate pain to habits you want to eliminate, just as you bring immediate pleasure to those you want to build. Clear explains that this isn't about guilt or shame. It's about reinforcing feedback loops. When a behavior feels satisfying right away, your brain sees it as worth doing again. When it feels unpleasant, your brain learns to avoid it. But here's the twist. The most powerful rewards aren't external, they're internal. Feelings of pride, progress, and identity affirmation are the deepest motivators. When you finish a habit and say to yourself, "I'm proud of what I just did," or "That's who I am now," you reinforce the most powerful belief of all. You are becoming the person you want to be. That's the real reward. So, how do we apply this? Track your habits. Seeing visible progress, like checking a box or marking a calendar, is incredibly satisfying. That's why habit trackers work. They make the reward visible. Celebrate the win. Even a small win deserves recognition. Smile. Say yes. Do a little fist pump. These signals reinforce success. Use reinforcement intentionally. Pair hard habits with soft rewards, especially at the beginning, when momentum is fragile. Watch out for instant gratification traps. Recognize when you're being pulled into a behavior just because it feels good in the moment. Awareness is step 1 toward change. Chapter 16. How to stick with good habits every day. Building a good habit is just the beginning. Keeping it alive day after day is where the real challenge lies. In this chapter, James Clear unveils a powerful truth. Consistency isn't about perfection. It's about showing up again and again, even if the action is small. The secret weapon? Visual proof. And that comes in the form of habit tracking. Clear introduces us to a remarkably simple yet powerful method. Use a visual cue to mark your progress, whether it's crossing a day off a calendar, checking a box in an app, or jotting down a quick note in a journal. The act of tracking your behavior turns your habit into something real, something you can see. It becomes tangible, and with each check mark you reinforce your identity as the kind of person who sticks to their habits. Tracking serves 2 purposes. It, a signal, and a motivator. When you look at a streak you've built, 5 days, 10 days, 30 days, It taps into your natural desire not to break the chain. There's a unique satisfaction in watching your effort accumulate. Each day adds to a sense of momentum, like a snowball gathering mass as it rolls downhill. You start to feel proud of what you've built. And pride is fuel, but perfection isn't the point. The reality is that life happens. You'll miss a day, and that's okay. What matters most is how you respond. Clear's advice is clear and powerful. Never miss twice. One missed day won't ruin your progress, but two can become a new pattern. So if you fall off track, just get back on immediately. Recovery is a skill just as important as discipline. He also talks about the value of keeping your habits simple and measurable. Don't overcomplicate your tracking system. The easier it is to mark your progress, the more likely you are to do it. If you need to write a paragraph in your journal, you'll skip it. But if it's just a check mark or a quick note, you'll do it even on your busiest day. Simplicity sustains consistency. Another key insight. Don't mistake the measure for the habit itself. Sometimes people get obsessed with the tracker. How many steps they took, how many books they read, while forgetting the purpose behind the behavior. Don't let the tracking replace the actual habit. The tracker is a tool, not the goal. What's most powerful about this chapter is how it reframes success as something you see. Success doesn't have to be a dramatic transformation. It can be quiet, humble, invisible to others. But if it's visible to you, it matters. When you track your habits, you're telling your brain, this matters. I'm making progress. And progress, even tiny, is the most powerful form of motivation. So the real art of sticking with good habits isn't about willpower or raw discipline. It's about setting up systems that show you your own progress. It's about building visual proof of your new identity. One check mark, one day, one small step at a time. Chapter 17. How an accountability partner can change everything. There's something incredibly powerful about the human need to be seen, about knowing that someone else is watching. In this chapter, James Clear explores how this very instinct can be harnessed to build better habits through accountability. When you make a promise to yourself, it's easy to rationalize failure. But when someone else is watching, when someone expects you to show up, everything changes. Accountability turns private intention into public commitment. It makes your goals visible, and with that visibility comes pressure. Not the toxic kind, but the kind that can push you forward when motivation fades. We are social creatures. We don't just want to succeed. We want to be seen succeeding. And more importantly, we don't want to let people down, especially people we respect. Clear introduces the idea of the accountability partner, someone who holds you to your word. It can be a friend, a coach, a mentor, or even a group. Their role is simple but critical. They expect you to follow through, and when you don't, they notice. This awareness, knowing that someone will ask, "Did you do what you said you'd do?" can be the missing piece in turning intentions into actions. He also discusses a fascinating concept called the accountability contract. It's a written or verbal agreement that outlines what habit you're committing to, how often you'll do it, and what happens if you fail. But here's the kicker. It includes consequences, real ones. Not following through might mean losing money, doing an embarrassing task, or disappointing someone important. That sting of possible loss can sharpen your focus like nothing else. This isn't about guilt. It's about leverage. When motivation runs low, and it will, accountability is the structure that keeps you upright. It's the scaffolding that holds your habit in place until it becomes strong enough to stand on its own. And often, just the knowledge that someone is watching is enough to tip the scale toward action, especially on days when excuses start to creep in. Clear also points out that the best accountability partners are not just cheerleaders. They truth. They care enough to call you out, to remind you of your goals, to say you're capable of more than this. That kind of honest support is rare, but incredibly valuable. When you find someone like that, you don't just find accountability. You find growth. The chapter closes with this core truth. Habits don't exist in isolation. They are deeply embedded in our social lives. If you want to change your behavior, change your environment, and that includes your relationships. Surround yourself with people who expect excellence from you, who live the way you aspire to live. Their presence will quietly elevate your standards. Ultimately, accountability isn't just about pressure. It's about partnership. It's about inviting someone into your journey, someone who helps you rise when you're tempted to fall. And with that kind of support, even your hardest habits become a little easier to stick with, day after day, choice after choice. Chapter 18. The Truth About Talent. When genes matter and when they don't. At some point in our journey of growth and change, we all ask the question, do I have what it takes? And in this chapter, James Clear takes a deep dive into the role talent and genetics play in shaping our habits, our success, and our long-term performance. It's not the typical motivational fluff that says anyone can do anything. Instead, Clear offers a grounded, honest, yet empowering perspective. Your genes do matter, but they don't define you. They help you find your lane. What you do inside that lane is what ultimately shapes your destiny. He begins with a reality check. We're all born different. Some people are naturally better at sprinting. Others are better at solving puzzles, painting, speaking, or organizing. It's not defeatist to acknowledge this. It's strategic, because understanding your natural inclinations helps you choose the habits and pursuits that align with your strengths. Clear emphasizes that success isn't about forcing yourself to be great at something unnatural. It's about finding where your natural talents intersect with effort and interest. This is your genetic sweet spot. He describes it as the area where your biology gives you a slight edge and your passion gives you fuel. In that zone, progress feels smoother, habits stick easier, and the long game becomes more sustainable. Take elite athletes, for example. Physical attributes like height, limb length, or lung capacity can give someone a competitive advantage in specific sports. But outside the world of professional athletics, these differences apply in subtler ways too. Some people are more introverted or extroverted. Some are more risk-averse, some more aggressive. All of these traits affect how we respond to habits and environments. If you lean into them instead of resisting them, you build momentum. But talent alone isn't enough. In fact, relying solely on talent can be a trap. What separates peak performers from everyone else isn't raw ability. It's consistency. Talent is a starting point, not a guarantee. If anything, a small natural advantage becomes massive only when it's multiplied by years of deliberate habit. As Clear puts it, genes cannot make you successful without habits to back them up. So how do you find your sweet spot? Clear offers 3 guiding questions. What feels fun to you but like work to others? What comes naturally to you that others struggle with? Where do you get better results than most people with less effort? When you answer these honestly, you begin to see patterns, and these patterns point to areas where forming habits will feel less like an uphill battle and more like a natural rhythm. He also introduces the idea of exploring and exploiting. In the beginning, you should explore many interests, environments, and routines to discover where you naturally shine. Once you've found that fit, then comes the time to double down, to exploit that discovery by building habits that reinforce it. And while talent helps, the real magic happens when you align your identity, your environment, and your habits. If you see yourself as someone who thrives in your chosen field and your environment reinforces that identity, then your habits become automatic. Effort becomes flow, and you start to operate at a higher level with less resistance. Ultimately, this chapter is not about accepting limits. It's about choosing wisely. You can become excellent at many things, but you'll become world at very few. Your job is to align your habits with your gifts, not to wish for different ones. When you do that, you don't just build better habits, you build a better version of yourself that feels authentic, empowered, and equipped for long-term success. Chapter 19. The Goldilocks Rule. How to stay motivated in life and work. Motivation, that elusive force we all crave, often feels like a spark that flickers and fades. One day you're fired up, the next you're dragging your feet. In this chapter, James Clear peels back the psychology of sustained effort and introduces a simple but powerful idea: the Goldilocks Rule. It's the idea that humans experience peak motivation when they're working on tasks that are just the right level of difficulty. Not too hard, not too easy, but just right. Think back to a time when you were completely absorbed in something. Maybe it was a game, a project, or learning a new skill. Chances are it challenged you enough to keep things interesting, but wasn't so difficult that it left you overwhelmed. That's the sweet spot the Goldilocks Rule describes. Clear explains that when a task is too easy, you get bored. When it's too hard, you get anxious or discouraged. But when it sits right at the edge of your current abilities, just difficult enough to stretch you, You enter a flow state where time melts away and effort feels enjoyable. He illustrates this principle using the story of tennis legend Steve Prefontaine and other high-performing individuals who pushed their limits incrementally, never taking on more than they could handle, but also never backing down from a challenge. Success, Clear says, is often a matter of staying in the zone where growth is hard enough to be engaging, but not so hard that it's defeating. But the chapter goes deeper than just staying in the sweet spot. Clear explores the emotional toll of mastery. Even if you're doing something you love, even if you're working in your zone, there will come a time when it gets boring. The glamour wears off, the excitement fades, and what's left is the daily grind. This is where most people quit, and this is what separates the amateurs from the pros. Clear argues that real mastery is about showing up even when you don't feel like it. It's about falling in love with the process, not just the results. Professionals don't rely on motivation. They rely on discipline. They stick to the schedule. They understand that boredom is not a sign of failure. It's a sign of progress. He brings up the example of elite performers like Olympic athletes, writers, musicians, and CEOs. They don't necessarily love every workout, writing session, or meeting, but they keep showing up. They've internalized that consistency beats intensity. They know that the road to success isn't paved with lightning bolts of inspiration. It's built on the quiet, repeated decisions to do the work. So how do you apply this? You start by designing your habits to ride that Goldilocks edge. If your habit is too easy, raise the bar slightly. Make it a touch harder. If it's too difficult, simplify. Break it down into something just a bit above your current skill level. That's where engagement lives. That's where growth happens. Next, prepare for the inevitable. Boredom. Expect it. Welcome it, because if you want to be great at anything, you'll have to do it even when the thrill is gone. Clear calls this the plateau of latent potential, the period when progress is invisible and motivation dries up. Most people give up, but if you can persist, you'll break through. The Goldilocks rule isn't just about performance. It's about sustainability. It's the key to enjoying your habits long-term. It's what keeps your brain stimulated and your willpower intact. And once you grasp it, you can stop chasing motivation and start designing systems that carry you through the ups and downs of the journey. In the end, Chapter 19 isn't about doing the hardest thing. It's about doing the right thing at the right level over and over again. That's how you win. That's how you stay motivated. And that's how small habits evolve into extraordinary outcomes. Chapter 20. The downside of creating good habits. At first glance, habits seem like the holy grail of personal transformation. Automatic actions that reduce decision fatigue, create consistency, and lead to long-term success. And they are, but in this final chapter, James Clear reminds us that habits, for all their power, come with a hidden cost. When taken too far or left unchecked, they can subtly narrow your vision, limit your creativity, and stifle growth. The truth is, the very automation that makes habits efficient can also make them dangerous. Habits are mental shortcuts. They let us conserve energy, streamline our actions, and move through life more fluidly. But once something becomes automatic, it also becomes unconscious. We stop paying attention. We stop asking whether it's still serving us. In the beginning, your habit helps you grow. Over time, it can trap you in a routine that no longer aligns with who you're becoming. Clear compares this to the career of a professional. Take a chef, for instance. When they first learn their craft, they experiment, explore new cuisines, make mistakes, and stretch their boundaries. But once they master the basics and build routines, they risk stagnation. If they don't challenge themselves to innovate, their once brilliant habits become limitations. They default to the familiar, and creativity withers. The same goes for all of us. Good habits help you become efficient, but they can also make you rigid. You might become so focused on following your routine, your gym schedule, your work rituals, your productivity hacks, that you stop seeing the bigger picture. You stop asking, is this still the best way? Am I still moving in the direction I want to go? Clear emphasizes the importance of reflection and review. He encourages us to step back regularly and evaluate our habits, our systems, and our goals. Just because something worked yesterday doesn't mean it works today. Just because a habit made sense when you started doesn't mean it still fits the person you've become. He introduces a practice he personally uses, an annual review and an integrity report. The annual review tracks what went well, what didn't, and what can improve. The integrity report is more introspective. It asks whether you're living in alignment with your values and what kind of person you are becoming through your habits. This kind of self-awareness is crucial because habits should serve your identity, not trap you inside it, because here's the danger: when habits become too automatic, they can turn into blinders. You go through the motions, convinced you're making progress, but in reality, you're stuck. True mastery, Clear says, is not just about automation, it's about conscious refinement. It's about using habits as tools, not cages. He also cautions us not to let habits become a proxy for purpose. Getting in shape, earning more money, reading more books. These are great goals, but they're not ends. They're means to a deeper purpose. Living a meaningful life, connecting with others, growing into the best version of yourself. If you're not careful, you can mistake progress for purpose. You can win the game of productivity and still feel empty inside. So what the solution? It flexible discipline. It the ability to stay consistent with your habits while also staying open to change. It understanding that routines are maps, not territories. They can guide you, but you must still pay attention to the terrain. Be willing to adjust. Be willing to question. Be willing to evolve. In wrapping up the book, Clear reminds us that atomic habits are not the goal, they are the path. They are the small decisions and actions that shape who we become. But we must always remain aware of why we started, where we're headed, and whether the system we've built still serves the life we want to live. Habits matter, yes, but self-awareness matters more. And in the end, the ultimate form of growth is not automatic. It is intentional. And so here we are. You've just completed a journey through one of the most powerful frameworks for change ever written. But this isn't the end, it's the beginning. Because real transformation doesn't come from listening to a book. It comes from applying what you've learned, one small action at a time. You now hold the tools to design a new identity, one that's shaped not by willpower, but by the systems you put in place. Remember, small habits, repeated daily, are not just routines. They're votes for the person you are becoming. The change you seek is already in motion. All it needs is consistency. So start today. Start now, one atomic habit at a time. If this audiobook inspired you, help us share it with others. Like the video, subscribe for more powerful summaries and deep insights. Comment below. What's one small habit you're starting today? And if you found value here, check out our full collection of audiobook summaries designed to help you grow bit by bit, day by day.